far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
Yes, it is. What the hell is going on, everyone? Thank you all for being here. Like I said yesterday, we have a very exciting and probably big show today, honestly. Hopefully we can keep it under 2 hours, but it is the Kyle Odom full manifesto. But as always, you know we're not just going to hit that. We've got a few little extra things we're going to weave in. If you don't know what the Kyle Odom story is, he was a US Marine who was a very smart person, and we're going to be looking at the evidence to show that, who also suddenly went to prison for shooting his church pastor 6 times, although the number is a little bit, it kind of changes a little bit, but shot him multiple times with hollow point rounds in the head, in the body. And he claimed that this church pastor was a shape-shifting reptilian, and that's why he shot him. Now, someone who gets shot 6 times generally doesn't live, especially when it's with hollow point rounds. This church pastor, the one who was apparently a reptilian, who was shot by a US Marine, so someone with gun training, knows how to handle a weapon, just healed up and survived and got on with his life. Now, we do know that geckos can regenerate their tails. I don't know. I'm just saying that's a thing, right? Geckos can regenerate their tails. This church pastor got shot 6 times with hollow point rounds and just got on with the rest of his life. He's basically the 50 Cent of the reptile kingdom or something like that. Now, like I said, we're actually going to be starting the show today with a little bit of David Icke, because is it really a reptilian show without a little bit of our Lord and Father, Grand Maester David Icke? But just before we get into that, I want to start the show because people are still filing in. And if you're watching this after, I will put chapter markers so you can skip the yapping if it bothers you. But I just want to say that after yesterday's show, I obviously started the show just kind of touching on the fact that I'm struggling a little bit just with the lack of meds that I normally have on hand if I need them. Because I didn't used to take them all the time for my ADHD. I didn't used to take them every day, but they were handy when I needed them. And I didn't bring them with me to Bali. And some days are a bit harder to get going. Now, what's crazy about that is when you bring up ADHD, this guy usually rocks up in the comments, and it's crazy. It's crazy the way he rocks up without doubt. And, he always rocks up and he says things like that ADHD, it's not actually a real thing. It's just in my head. And I'm just making it up. Or that my dad just didn't smack me enough when I was a child, which is crazy, which is absolutely crazy. And then this guy rocks up too. And he normally says, I think he actually has a medical degree, because that guy up there, he normally says something like ADHD isn't even real. It's a made up, it's just made up. So that's crazy when you look at that guy and you think he's got a medical degree and he's just here spending his time on YouTube correctly diagnosing people in the comments. I mean, shout out to him for using his spare time well. But, that isn't the reason why I brought this up. I mean, roasting these retards is a fun little side quest, because that's basically like going up to someone with like a severe mental disability or like Down syndrome or something and just going, pathetic. You could have just tried harder and you could have done so much more with your life. You wasted your time. That's literally what it's like doing. Okay. So just to let you guys know, that's what you look like to anyone who has like any concept of what ADHD actually is. But the reason why I actually brought this up is because for as many retards as there are in the chat that like to chime in on things like that, there are twice as many people who thanked me for sharing my experience with that. So I actually want to shout out to those people and let you guys know that it is something that I am open to talking about a little bit more, but probably not on this channel, just because it's not really what it's for. However, my other channel, Jostradamus TV, which is linked below, which is more of just kind of like real life lifestyle content, I'm happy to go into that a little bit more over there as well, because I know plenty of people here, yes, are neurospicy. We're a little bit different, and I think it's a great thing, but it can be a little bit difficult sometimes. So, if you are interested in that, jump on my other channel. It's Jostradamus TV, and it is linked below, and I'm happy to talk about that stuff a little bit more over there, and just trying to raw dog life, baby. We're going in raw, and it's the way it was meant to be. So we'll see how we go. Joy Wester, thank you very much for becoming a member, you little freak. Wow, you did that nearly 12 hours ago. Thank you very much, Joyce. And Rain with $20 says, bro, this should have you covered up for a crisp, fresh barley, high, and nasi goreng. All right, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. What a way to start the show. My man, Rain. Thank you very much. Let's jump over here to the Polarity TV. And like I said, we're going to kick this off. This is actually a long clip, by the way. And this is what's crazy is that there's so many synchronicities in this clip with what we're about to get into today. So I'm not just showing you this for no reason. I want you guys to watch this clip and just kind of take note of the ideas and themes that David talks about, because it carries so heavily into this whole manifesto that we're going to read through. But what's crazy is that this clip came out like 24 hours ago. So I had already and this Kyle Odom story, by the way, is from nearly a decade ago, maybe even over a decade, around that time. So this story isn't new. And neither is the idea of reptilians. But this specific clip just carries so much weight to what we're going to look at. So the fact that this just came out on a podcast with Joey Barton is wild. So let's kick it off. David Icke on the Joey Barton podcast.
So you had these gods, and you talk to ancient cultures and shamans and stuff, and they'll describe these ancient legends and stories about these gods operating in another dimension. The question is why, and it's become clear as I've researched this and others have researched this, that these entities are feeding off human energy. You remember in the Matrix when the Morpheus character held up a battery and said, the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world designed to turn humans into one of these. A battery, a source of energy.
Are they feeding off good energy or bad energy?
That it's very specific. These entities, because of what they do, because they're a bunch of prats and they give evil a bad name, they are in a low vibrational state. So to absorb energy from humans, it has to be low vibrational energy. And what it does, and so people who've researched this and experienced this long back, they've given it the name loosh, this low vibrational energy. And it's based on fear, anxiety, depression, anger, hatred. Not so much anger, that can be turned into a positive emotion, but hatred, conflict, war, all these things obviously generate this low vibrational energy, because it's been long known by mainstream science that every time we think and every time we feel an emotion, we're actually generating an energy. We're generating a frequency, and that frequency relates to the nature of the emotion. And fear, which is the tool of oppression in this reality, is a low vibrational emotion. So if I'm looking at you and you're in a terrible emotional state, I can see by your facial expression and I can see by your body language that you're in an emotional state. What I can't see is the energy that emotional state is giving off, because that's outside visible light. It goes into this astral dimension.
Well, yeah, people talk about some people can see auras around people and stuff
that's all
like
part
that.
of it, yeah. You go deeper into the field of the visual field than the normal visible light, you'll see things that will just bloody amaze you, because they're so different to the reality that visible light delivers to you. So that's going into the astral. And so every time there's a war, every time there's a conflict, every time there's a big row and there's kind of conflicts and hatred and all this stuff, we're generating this energy and they're feeding off it, which tells you something about the world immediately. There is no incentive whatsoever of these other dimensional entities to have a world of love, of harmony, of peace, of appreciation, of mutual support. None whatsoever. They want a world, and they are generating through this global cult events that are going to generate this low vibrational energy. They want people in states of fear, of worry. Am I going to pay the rent at the end of the month? Oh my God, is my relationship going to survive? Is my job going to survive? What AI? Oh my God. They want this stuff. Now this means they're feeding off human energy. This takes us to these
negative human energy.
Oh, low vibrational human energy, what we would call negative motion. Yeah.
So they're treating us almost like cattle in fear to feed off that kind of.
They're feeding off our fear. They're fucking feeding off the chicken and that kind of coke. Sorry, but the Scouse accent is just too much. But look, what David is saying here, he's basically saying that this negative presence that is feeding off of fear is acting through global cults, okay? Global cults, which we are hearing around the world, are satanic. And like it seems like different names, once again, for the same thing, right? You've got the Bible, which talks about demons that can be physical or non-physical, which is basically what David Icke is talking about, interdimensional beings that can kind of act upon us from another realm. But what is also interesting is that these things are often depicted, and I'm just sort of talking about the Bible here, they're often depicted as like demons don't look that different to like a humanoid reptile, right? Like, I don't know. Do you guys think I'm sort of making a leap there and clutching at straws? I actually don't. I really do think that if you look at like what does a demon look like, they're generally kind of scaly with like not exactly the same, but there is a similarity there. There is a similarity.
There's a chapter in the roadmap called Loosh Farm. That's what this is to them. It's a way of farming human energy by manipulating events that put people in a state of perception and response that generates this low vibrational energy, which takes us into satanic ritual. What's all that about? What do the gods get out of it? What is adrenochrome? So,
Ellen DeGeneres' favorite refreshment, I believe.
What they do, and what the ancients did, first of all, they were sacrificing young virgins to the gods. What's young virgins? A code for children. Because, as I've researched this over many, many years, there is a particular energy that these entities want more than any other, and that's the energy of children before puberty, right?
Yes, Maggie, allegedly, of course. This is all hypothetical, of course.
This is where you get your massive obsession with pedophilia from, and it's literally all over the world, and it connects into Satanism ultimately. But the energy of children has to be turned into a low vibrational state. So abused children, people who are violently abused, people who are sexually abused in all the ways that they are, that experience of the child puts them in a low vibrational state. And so this prepubescent energy suddenly becomes a low vibrational state that these entities can absorb. This is the whole basis of pedophilia. And so if you're looking at a satanic ritual, they are conducted specifically to generate extreme levels of terror in the victim, understandably terror. So as the victim is getting more and more terrorized in the build-up to the sacrifice, they're generating this. Terror is an extremely powerful low vibrational energy, and these gods are feeding off it in their astral state around the ritual conducted by their initiates and global cultists.
Almost like a Hunger Games, like a version of Hunger Games.
Well,
Who else has said that the world is like a Hunger Games before? I swear someone has. And I feel like he might have forgotten his meds.
I used to call human society for a long time the Hunger Games Society. It basically works in a very similar way. So what then happens is, as this terror manifests itself, it enters the blood in the form of an adrenaline. This terror produces this adrenaline in the blood. And that's what the Satanists drink, and we call it adrenochrome. I've talked to Satanists all over the world who've taken part in these rituals.
Is this a recent interview? I know you probably said it, but I wasn't listening. Yes, this literally came out in like the last day or two. Waruna Farm says, I'm not a fan of the dark stuff. It brings down the general vibe. Yeah, I feel you, bro. But, I feel like ignoring the dark stuff is how we got here. If everyone's just too scared to talk about it, the Baal worshippers just continue going. We have to shine light into the darkness, unfortunately. Otherwise, we just continue getting raped and pillaged by the elites of society.
Many with very rich and famous people, often against their will, not always, but often. And they describe how when these Satanists drink the blood of the sacrifice, laced with this adrenochrome, it's like a frickin' drug. They go crazy, right? And that's adrenochrome, and that's what these people are consuming. So all these stories in Washington D.C. about adrenochrome drinkers, it's true. That's what goes on. I've talked to people in America when I was traveling America, talking to no one maybe in those days, but phenomenal for research, who've taken part in these rituals, and they talk about, for instance, in major rituals, how what they're doing in the way that they're conducted is through the chants and the colors. Everything's a frequency. They're creating a frequency environment, and they often do them in particular places where they have vortexes on this global grid of so-called ley lines. And where ley lines cross, especially a lot of them, it creates a massive vortex. And
is this not like, don't they say places like Skinwalker, Bradshaw Ranch, like places in other places around like Arizona and Sedona are where these like ley lines are intersecting? And that is why, I guess for lack of a better term, like the veil seems to be thinner there, and people have these experiences there because there are things kind of seeping in and out of the reality that we can perceive.
They often do rituals at these points. A lot of churches, for instance, are on and cathedrals are on these big vortex points. And what it does is it thins out the vortex, it thins out the frequency difference between this astral dimension and this human dimension.
Yes, and Stonehenge. Interesting. Is there actually like an explanation as to what Stonehenge is? I mean, I'm sure the mainstream ones are probably garbage, just like the pyramids, but is there like a general consensus of what it is, or is there like a conspiratorial idea on what it actually is or was?
And these Satanists describe how during the rituals, when this energetic environment is created by the ritual, that entities slip through the vortex into this reality. Often they're described as reptilian, but not always, but absolutely non-human entities. And by the way, on the reptilian front, there was a guy called Robert Monroe.
Pay attention to this. Pay attention to this part. It's important to the rest of the show.
And he popularized, he was basically a media executive at the time, radio executive. He popularized through a series of books something called astral traveling, which is when you project your consciousness into the astral dimension without a near-death experience. You're very much physically alive, but you project your consciousness into the astral dimension. And he was very skilled at it, and he was so skilled at it that he attracted the attention of the United States military, especially their psychological wing. And they did a study, it was called the Gateway Study, and the CIA declassified the report quite a few years ago. And what they did is they got Robert Monroe and they got other people who were skilled in this astral projection, where you just project your consciousness into this astral dimension. And they did this study on what they experienced in this astral dimension. And of course, they're looking for common themes and confirmatory themes. And one of the things that was a common theme is that they experienced so many reptilian entities in this astral dimension that they gave them a name in the Gateway Project. They called them the alligators. And I've been saying all along that this reptilian manipulation is coming from the astral dimension. That's where the
But the
most of them
Egyptians,
are.
wasn't the
Okay, he's talking about this reptilian infiltration is coming from, and manipulation is coming from the astral dimension, and that is where Robert Monroe, the essentially the creator and founder of the Gateway Experience, documented this. This is from Robert Monroe. Okay, Old World keeps saying we don't want to watch David Icke. We want to know what you have to say. Old World, did you run a general consensus of everyone in the chat and ask what they wanted? Because I think you're just projecting your own opinion and assuming everyone is the same as you, but everyone's actually a little bit different, okay? So just relax, bro. Maybe get a tap water, go have a stretch, and come back when we get on with the rest of the show. Kelly Hall with $20 says, woohoo, get to spend this morning with my fellow weirdos. School's cancelled, winter storm, wishing I was in Bali. A day off is good for my ADHD. Absolutely, Kelly. We need those sporadic days off, absolutely. And I'm glad to have you here with us. Thank you very much. And Charlie Stewart, celebrating 3 months, says, loving the weirdness. Charlie, thank you very much. Loving having you here. Snail Burner threw in $2. Thank you, Snail. And Draco, welcome back as a member. Hopefully you're not of the Malfoy family, which, speaking of, we will be watching Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets straight after the stream.
Egyptian gatekeepers of the underworld, kind of crocodile.
Yeah, all this stuff.
Man or something.
And, you know, I mean, I think they do exist within the earth as well, in some kind of in a physical form, if you like, in our dimension. But overwhelmingly, it's coming from this astral dimension. And it was Robert Monroe that coined the term "loosh," because he said what I learned in these astral travels was that they're feeding off our low vibrational energy, which he gave the name "loosh."
That's the thing. If you'd have said this in 1991, but subsequently, you know, Jimmy Savile scandals broke, Jeffrey Epstein scandals broke. You know, there's lots of. Nowadays, it's kind of like, oh yeah, there's something nefarious going on. That's not to mention all the other stuff that's come out about Mountbatten and Edward Heath and all the other allegations that are out there with these kind of paedophilic kind of cults.
Yeah,
it'd have been seen as left field, whereas now it's a lot more mainstream.
Yes, it is. And I met a lady in 1997, I think it was 97, 98, who had been a close friend of Princess Diana for 9 years until they fell out. And
does anyone know who he's talking about here, by the way? I'm interested.
She told me, going one step back, I talked about the 12 separate people I met over a period of 15 days in America, 1996 time, 96, 97, that said they'd seen this phenomenon of someone in a human form turn into a reptile and then go back again. And I came back.
No, I don't think it's Arizona Wilder. I don't think she knew Princess Diana, which is what he just said then. So I don't know who he's talking about. But that is who I thought of originally.
From America. And I had a meeting scheduled with a lady who said that she used to live with the warden of a place called Burnham Beeches, which is in the west of London. It's an area of copse and clearings and forests and stuff. And it's owned by the City of London, which is a big red flag because that's really massively that City of London so-called square mile is massively part of this global
cities
cult.
within cities.
Oh, massive. So anyway.
Speaking of cities within cities, we've got the City of London, right? You've got the Vatican. Am I right in saying Washington, D.C. is another one of those? I feel like when we've spoken about this before, people in the chat have said Washington, D.C. as well. Is that true? Or am I making that up? That Washington, D.C. has its own set of laws, the same way that the City of London does, the same way the Vatican does. Okay, yes, DC does. I mean, that's very strange. First of all, very strange. These three places are like the just breeding grounds of conspiracy law and just sus people and global elites, etc. What I'm curious of, because I don't think it is exactly the same, but when we talk about like cities within cities, it's not the exact same thing. But I do think of like, mainly because I covered it in a video and the strangeness of it, but the ACT and Canberra in Australia, like we had New South Wales and, you know, Sydney and Melbourne were like the big developing cities at the time. And then suddenly they were just like, you know what? We're going to go make the capital in bumfuck nowhere in the middle of New South Wales. And we're just going to carve out this little circle and we're going to make it its own state. And I'm pretty sure the ACT is like one of the only states that can be overruled by the federal government of Australia. So I don't know if it's exactly like the Vatican and DC and the City of London, but it is strange that, like, you know, Australia already had these established cities when it was not colonized. What's the word? That federated. And then randomly they were like, you know what? Let's just fucking do this random ass city in the middle of nowhere. We'll build it up from scratch, despite already having a thriving Melbourne and Sydney. Very strange. I don't know if it's like got its own set of laws, but it is like weirdly overruled by the federal government, unlike any other state. And the Northern Territory is the same as well, which is where Pine Gap is.
Anyway, she said that she went out one night. Well, let me just come back one step. I go to see her because I want her to tell me about her experience of Satanism, which she'd had being brought up among Satanists. And we finished.
This has 6 minutes left, by the way, for old mate who was having an aneurysm. 6 minutes left of David Icke, and we'll get into the manifesto.
Finished the conversation, which was very interesting. And I had a cup of tea, and I put my cup of tea down. I said, "Well, thanks for that. It's nice of you to talk to me. It's very interesting." And as I turned to walk away, I said to her, "You know, I've some amazing experiences. I keep hearing people tell me they've seen people turn into reptiles. And by this time I've turned. And all I can hear in the background is, right? And she's holding her chest when I turn around. What's going on? She said, "I weren't going to tell you that." She said, "I thought even you'd think I was mad." So, because I haven't gone public on the reptilian thing by this time. And she told me of going through the clearing in Burnham Beaches where she lived in a house, which I've seen in among the trees. She went through one night and there was a light, and she crept towards the light and looked through, and she saw a circle of people in long robes. And the guy conducting this ritual was Ted Heath, who was the
Prime Minister.
He was then Prime Minister at the time she experienced this. And next to him was a bloke.
This is who he's talking about, by the way. Former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Ted Heath.
Called Anthony Barber, who was his Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Not Rachel from accounts.
No, but ladies and gentlemen, this is how it works. This is the people that are telling you they're on your side. Anyway, she said, I'm watching. She said, and suddenly Heath transforms into a reptilian figure and grows by about 1 foot 2 feet. That is a common theme you find all over the world. When people see people shapeshift from human to reptilian, the reptilian is taller. And she said, first of all, when he started speaking in a reptilian form, it was like the old transatlantic telephone line where there's big gaps between it, like he's coming from far away. And she said the thing that struck me most was that when the transformation happened, no one in the circle reacted. It was as if to them it was the most common thing that they've experienced, absolutely something they experience all the time. There was no, it was all very much as
just all another day at the office in the UK cabinet. Yep, just another day at work. Josh, just so you are aware, you are considered a gatekeeper where I come from, since you won't touch flat Earth. Just saying. Well, that's okay, Nicholas. Where are you from? Are you from the local mental health facility where I have 20% discounts for when you like the video? If so, that's okay. I'm on good terms with those people there. They're probably just having a joke with you. They know me well.
They expect. And I named in The Biggest Secret in 1997, I named Heath as a Satanist, a pedophile. And the passage was read to him by a local journalist on the Isle of Wight, if you can call her a journalist, in the week of publication. And all he said was, David Icke must be mad. And there was nothing else. It took 17 years for allegations to appear about Heath, who was a absolute brutal paedophile. And Wiltshire police investigated and said if he was still alive, then he would be brought in for questioning on the evidence that we've seen. And
isn't it wild? Like Ted Heath, former prime minister, accused of being a pedophile while he was alive. After he's died, a whole bunch more allegations come out against him. And Jimmy Savile, another prolific pedophile in the United Kingdom. And, I would assume, I don't really get into, the politics of the UK and the royals very much because, I think they're all likely lizards. But, the fact that I'm sure being the prime minister, you'd probably have some kind of relationship with the royal family in England. You'd at least know them. You'd probably have some kind of, mandatory formality of like a dinner with them or something like that. And we know that Savile was very close with the royal family. And he was also a prolific pedophile. And then you've got the whole Prince Andrew thing where he's photographed on Epstein Island. And, isn't it just a bit weird that everyone high up seems to be a pedophile? I mean, not everyone. Okay, let's just be clear. Not everyone. But even just like one person is quite shocking. One person getting into the position of being a prime minister or, the main actor on primetime TV that everyone grows up adoring. Even just one of those people turning out to be a prolific pedophile is extremely shocking. When multiple of them are, when it seems like a majority of them are involved in some kind of weird sexual ritualistic proclivities, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is that about? And why does it just kind of like happen? And then it just is like radio silence until everyone kind of forgets about it. And then it's like, woo, football season starts. Anyway, it doesn't matter that the Queen's son might be a pedophile or whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter anymore because football's on. Woo, let's go.
that reminded me then of something I experienced. When I was in the Green Party, in 1989, the European elections, the polls were showing that the Green Party was suddenly having a real surge in interest. And I was invited onto Sky News, their live election program, to talk about the results as they came in. So I arrived at Sky News and I got met by this lady in reception, and she took me through to this makeup room. And the door of the makeup room was open. So I walked in and I sat down, and she said, someone will be along in a minute. And she walked out. So I'm sitting there looking at the mirror, and something caught my eye just to my right. And I turned around, and just behind the door, which is why I couldn't see him, was Ted Heath, who'd just been on the program and was waiting to have his makeup taken off. And so I looked at him, and, being a friendly chap, I said, all right, mate, how you doing? I couldn't stand his politics, but hello, how are you doing? And he turned and he looked at me. And in all this experience, he never once said a word. Never said a word. He started at the top of my head, and he went slowly down like that, like he. And the thing that came to me as being scanned in some way. And then he goes to my kind of feet, and then he goes back again to the top of my head, and then turns and looks at the mirror. Never said a word. And then eventually the makeup woman comes in and it's like, what the fuck just happened? Anyway, while he's scanning me, I'm looking at his eyes and the entirety of his eyes turn black. Not just the pupils, the whites turn black. And I described it as like looking into two black holes. It was like I was looking through his black eyes into some other dimension. And none of the Betty Shine stuff had happened before at this point. It was all kind of an experience that was all kind of new to me. I had no way of explaining what I was seeing. And as I then, when I really started getting into this information, I kind of remembered that, and I started researching what they call the black-eyed people. And you find there are stories all over the world of exactly that same experience of people seeing someone and their eyes, including the whites, turn jet black. Because these people are not human.
They are not human, people. And where have we heard this before? The Juliet Bryant story with Jeffrey Epstein, again, friends with Prince Andrew, by the way, and who we just mentioned, Jimmy Savile, you know, the usual gang. They're like the demonic in-betweeners. they're the demonic in-betweeners. Prince Andrew, Jimmy Savile, Ted Heath, and Jeffrey Epstein. And instead of going to Australia, they go to Epstein's Island. Look, that's probably not something to joke about, to be honest, but you know what I'm saying. Also, P. Diddy, in his trial, I forget his ex-girlfriend's name. The one that there's footage of him like beating up in the hallway. She says that his eyes would turn black when he would get angry. And we know, yes, Cassie, thank you. Pretty sure it was Cassie. And and I covered that in the video, in the live stream that I did. And that she said that his eyes would go completely black when he would get mad. And obviously there is this weird connection to Diddy and Hollywood, where there is this like initiations to these weird satanic occult groups. And we've heard rappers like Lil Tony say you just got to go do some gay shit with the Illuminati to get into these cults. And then you get all the money and fame that you want. And then, of course, the Tila Tequila one as well, with the eyes going black, which we sort of heard not through Billy Corgan directly, but with a little bit of digging and a little bit of a tip-off. We found out that that was likely who Billy Corgan was talking about. So it's weird, right? What is that? What is that about? Well, I want to just keep all of that in mind. So some of the key things there were Robert Monroe, founder of the Gateway Experience, who himself would document encounters with negative entities that he would term as alligators, because that's what they looked like. That's Robert Monroe saying that. We're hearing that a lot of these people who are claiming to be able to shapeshift are also like hungry for power. They're in positions of power and they often exert power over children or other people to elicit fear and negative emotions and frequencies, which they then feed off. And there seems to also be this weird sexual side to it all in the realm of like pedophilia, but it also is part of like their rituals as well. So they're just like the sex things, the hungry for power, the astral traveling reptiles. This is the stuff I want to sort of just keep in mind before we get into reading this manifesto, which we're about to do right now. But just before we do, let's catch up on a couple of super chats. Michael Gibbons, celebrating 4 months, says, just watched the Icke chat earlier today myself. Hope you can deal with the ADHD, Josh. All the best. Take a Ross breath and carry on. Thank you, Michael Gibbons. I appreciate you, brother, and thank you for the 4 months. Rusty says, given the opportunity, Josh, would you do the Monroe Institution program? I mean, I've always said I would, and I am interested in it. But when I hear things like this and, you know, the fact that it is kind of backed by the CAA, who haven't always done the most morally ethical things, it does make me wonder. But at the same time, I've listened to some Gateway tapes and I've generally found that I feel better after it too. So, you know, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. I'm not sure about that. Draco says, Josh, I'd highly recommend daily pranayama, breath work. Been doing it for a week and there's been a noticeable improvement in my ADHD. Thank you, brother. Send me a link. I'll be down to check it out. Heather, celebrating 9 months. Heather, thank you very much. She says they had to build Canberra to cover up the underground fast train to Pine Gap. I have heard about that. I have heard that we may have a maglev train that goes from Canberra to Pine Gap. Yes, I have. And Christina says, love all the work you do, Josh. Hope you're enjoying Bali. Much love from a fellow weirdo, Christina. Nice to see you here. Thank you very much for the $5. I appreciate you. All right, so let's jump over here to the Kyle Odom manifesto. So the read through is about to begin. Now, I want to start specifically here. This isn't the beginning, but we're just going to start here just to give you guys a little bit of context before we get to the start, because this is some of the documentation that Kyle provided at the end of the manifesto to just show his like academic credentials. Because before we get into this, I want to show you guys that this is a smart and this is an intelligent man. And you can kind of gather that through the way that he writes and the things that he talks about. But I thought we'd just check out a few of these things quickly before we get started. So first of all, you've got these certificates here from Idaho State University. And this letter here on the right is basically inviting him to be accepted into a doctor of pharmacy program. So this is after he was in the Marines. And I'm pretty sure that, yeah, so other than that, this is just an invitation. And then I think if we go to the next page, then we've got like his just general resume or CV. I think resume is maybe an Australian term. Do you guys call it a resume in America? This probably isn't worth reading too much. You can see there he's working in pharmacy in 2015. And where is my mouse? Undergrad in 2013 to 2014, the University of Idaho, which we just saw. And then 2006 to 2010, he was a flight equipment technician in the U.S. Marine Corps. Okay, so 06 to 2010 was the U.S. Marines. Then he sort of took up a interest in pharmacy and pursued medicine. And then we can see here some of his grades, I believe, from the University of Idaho. So it says here, awarded graduate in biochem, graduated as the magma cum lord. Okay, I mean, we just call it a bachelor's degree in Australia. You guys get kind of creative. That's crazy. Magna cum lord, sorry. Is that actually what you guys call it? The magna cum lord? You guys didn't want to just go with like a bachelor's degree or something? Who named that? Who named that one? Do you guys let the frat house name your degrees? What the hell is a cum lord? Please, can someone please fill me in? But that's cool. That's cool. You guys are creative like that. I like it. It's a little bit more interesting. And then I think the rest of this is just his. So you've got, I guess, his time in the U.S. Marine Corps here and his GPA at the university, which in Australia, a high GPA, I believe here is 6. I think 6 is the highest from memory. I think I had I was somewhere in the 5s, okay? Decent. But my degree also wasn't super intellectually challenging either. But 4, I believe 4 in the United States is a perfect GPA, and he finished with a 3.96. So I think this is like, you know, if you're trying to get into like med school, if you're trying to be a doctor, a lawyer, this is the kind of GPA you're finishing with. So I just wanted to show this first, so we have a little bit of understanding that this guy isn't just some random nobody. US Marine, finishing with a near perfect GPA as well. Josh sounding so lower class right now. Much love, brother. Is that because I'm not familiar with the magma cum lord? Is this a known thing somewhere else? Because it's certainly not what we do in Australia. We just call it a bachelor's degree or a PhD, and we just kind of get on with our life. But, you know, if you want to be the magma cum lord, go for it. So, all right, let's kick this off. This is the Kyle Odom manifesto here. So this is how it starts off. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Look, see, this is what happens when I don't have the meds. We're just going to finish the super chats here, and then we'll get started, just so we're up to date. Rain with $10 says, the Sound of Freedom movie was blocked by Hollywood for years and only released much later. Makes you wonder if they were trying to stop it because they're complicit. I haven't seen that one. I don't know the movie you're referring to, but brother, it wouldn't surprise me. And Christina with $20. Christina, you are a sweetheart. Thank you very much. That's very generous. All right. I'm going to try not to interrupt myself, which is difficult, until we kind of, you know, do blocks at a time. So here we go. Who is Kyle Odom? Born and raised in North Idaho. Grew up in a loving family, joined the Marine Corps after high school, developed an interest in science, went to school for a degree in biochemistry, won numerous scholarships and awards, graduated the magna cum laude, and then got invited to a prestigious university to work on genetics. As you can see, I'm pretty smart. I'm also 100% sane, 0% crazy. And so there are a lot of links in this. Then he's referring to some of the documents that he's attached, which we've just kind of looked at. Why did he do it? My life was ruined by an intelligent species of amphibian humanoid from Mars. I wish I was joking. Keep reading. Then we've got some dot points here. They were here long before we ever existed. Their technology is millions of years more advanced than ours. I've seen them do things that defy all comprehension. They have a massive breeding stock of humans, which they breed and control from birth. They use these humans to live vicarious lives among us. They appear to be completely normal because they're good at imitating human behavior. See the Martian technology for an explanation on this, and we'll get to that soon. The actual Martians live deep underground here and inside of the moon. They take control of wild human beings and use them as sex slaves. Don't believe me? Ask President Obama to take a lie detector test on this one. They tried to take me, but they were unable to control my mind. They've been following me ever since. I tried everything to get my life back. I begged, I bargained, and I threatened. Everything I tried to do was sabotaged. I attempted to delete myself twice, but they stopped me both times. My last resort was to take action that would bring this to the public's attention. My story. Okay, this is the actual story here. Spring 2014. Everything started while I was at University of Idaho. Spring 2014 was my final semester, and I was taking a heavy course load. I was very stressed due to the intensity of my schedule, so I searched for a way to cope. I discovered meditation, which seemed to help, so it became part of my daily routine. As I learned more about meditation, I became interested in consciousness and our ability to affect it. I kept working on my meditation techniques and began achieving extreme states of consciousness. This continued until I encountered another being through meditation. It happened one night in February 2014, and it was the most profound experience I've ever had. I was lying in bed meditating, then suddenly left my physical body. I entered a space that was completely dark and had no awareness of my physical boundaries or orientation. I felt very peaceful there until a blue light began to approach me. As the blue light got closer, I realized it was another being. Once I was in the being's presence, I felt an immediate sense of wrongdoing. It felt like I was being told, "You shouldn't be here." I instantly conceded and felt guilty. Then I began to distance myself from the being. This had an impact on them and seemed to change their mind about me. The moment I began to distance myself from the being, I became overwhelmed by a feeling I can only describe as unconditional love. During this part of the experience, our minds became connected, and I saw that the being was female. I then began to feel the most euphoric, comforting, and blissful feelings I have ever felt. It was incredibly powerful and life-altering. Now, isn't there something, I feel like I've seen people speaking recently about certain colors of like orbs and lights, and that perhaps blue, red, and orange, etc., have some kind of potential meaning. I'm not necessarily saying that is the case, but I feel like I've heard people discussing these things. Sounds like something a cum lord would say. It definitely does. It definitely does. Okay, let's keep going. Next thing I knew, I woke up, I had tears in my eyes, and I couldn't get out of bed. I felt a profound sense of loss, like I had just lost someone close to me. It was very painful. A few minutes later, the experience left my mind against my will, and I went about my day. After that, I had no urge to meditate at all. Every time I even thought about meditation, the thought was stripped from my mind. When I finally did try meditating again, I was unable to achieve anything. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I knew it wasn't going to improve. Ultimately, I decided to give up on meditation and just focus on my classes. The remainder of the semester became exceedingly easy for me. This part's really interesting. It felt like I had tapped into some kind of power. I was exerting no mental effort, even though the classes had been extremely difficult before. I also began to have complex thoughts and a depth of understanding I had never reached before. About a month later, I started interviewing at the graduate schools I had applied to. Shortly after the interviews were done, I started receiving offers. I decided to accept the offer from Baylor College of Medicine to work on a PhD in human genetics. I was very excited about the opportunity to work at such a prestigious university. The future looked bright and I couldn't wait to get started. I'm just curious, does anyone have any thoughts either way about the idea of doing the gateway tapes or perhaps like learning about consciousness, discovering that you can sort of get yourself into different states of mind. And then I guess feeling like you don't need to meditate as much anymore, or feeling like you've almost achieved what you were looking for at that time, perhaps. And then things in your life just sort of felt a lot easier and smoother. I'm just curious if anyone has, if that rings true for anyone, or if anyone has any thoughts around that. Let's continue. So this is October 2014, Houston, Texas. Everything changed once I started the program. The moment I arrived, I could see flaws in every professor's research. My mind was so expanded that I could instantly understand the implications of entire research projects. Because of this, I was able to see the weakness in all available projects. This caused me to become very concerned about what I was doing, and I felt like I was wasting my time. I voiced my concerns to my advisor, and he casually brushed them aside. He told me to just have fun. It'll be fun. I kept trying to get motivated, but things continued to get worse. I started seeing flaws in the foundations of genetics and other fields. It got to the point where I couldn't stop thinking about them. To make things worse, no one else seemed to care, which really bothered me. All these issues made it impossible for me to continue, so I decided to leave. The day after I decided to leave, my life became a living hell. I couldn't sleep and my mind felt sapped. I was entirely at peace with my decision, so I knew something strange was happening to me. After a few days of this, 2 of the graduate students began reaching out to me, Eugene Lurie and Brandon Pekarek. Sorry. I barely knew them, so it seemed unusual that they would contact me. When I went to see them, they both kept pointing their finger at me, saying pew pew, like they were shooting a gun. They did this over and over, and I kept wondering what their problem was. Months after I had left Houston, I was told that Eugene and Brandon were not human. They were tasked with making me into the next school shooter, as they called it. I imagine this is why many of our school shootings take place. Now, again, I feel like at this point, there are things that, you could hear that and be like, oh, this guy potentially sounds a little schizo. And I get that. But I would encourage you to just reserve your judgment until the end here. Because if you're feeling like that, you're not alone. But again, just hang in there. Hang in there with me. Anyway, things slowly improved after I stopped talking with Eugene and Brandon. But I was mentally exhausted. I tried to figure out what to do with my life, but I could hardly think. Eventually, I left Texas and started applying for jobs all over the country. A few months later, things took a strange turn. October 2014, back in Idaho. In spring 2015, I finally secured an interview with a food company. I thought I was about to get something going with my life, but I was wrong. I couldn't sleep at all the night before my interview. I literally stayed awake the entire night, which had never happened to me before. I looked unrecognizable in the mirror the next morning, and my mind felt sapped worse than it had in Houston. Needless to say, the interview didn't go well. I couldn't think, and I had extreme difficulty with normal conversation. After the interview was over, I suddenly felt fine and looked perfectly normal. I slept great that night and then made my way to the airport the next morning. This is where the story gets weird. On the plane ride back home, my seat was taken. I asked a flight attendant, and she directed me to a new seat. Once I sat down, an older gentleman in front of me kept glancing back until he got my attention. As he kept looking back, my head began to hurt and tingle. The moment my head began to hurt, his lips curled up into this evil-looking smile. The pain and tingling in my head continued for the rest of the flight and got more intense as time went on. Every time I felt it, the man would start taking notes in a notepad. About halfway through the flight, someone else in front of me held up a newspaper that said psychic reading for like 5 minutes straight. It was blatantly obvious they were doing something to me, but I didn't know what. Once we landed, the older gentleman kept showing me his track phone as if to say, get one of these. I had applied to several government agencies before this happened, so I thought this might be their way of contacting me. Out of curiosity, I decided to go buy a track phone. What is a track phone, by the way? And can you guys explain how would just owning a track phone enable an agency to contact him without actually having his number or his details? Can anyone explain that to me in the chat? I checked it every day to see if anyone messaged or called. About a month later, I got a text message from a man named John Padula. He invited me to come to the church, The Altar. It seemed like a strange place to be recruiting for government jobs, but I went anyway. After I got there and went inside, something felt very wrong. I felt as if my life was in danger, and I became so uncomfortable I had to leave. Which is interesting, right? Just based on what we've talked about in the last couple of shows, just getting those weird feelings when you feel like something is wrong or You know, you get a weird feeling like you should leave or you should move, and then something happens. Interesting. Track phone is a burner phone you buy minutes for. Right. Okay. So it's just kind of like a little prepaid thing that you get, little throwaway phone. I mean, why do you guys have those? Like, that's like, if there's any drug dealers in the vicinity who might need the perfect phone to operate their business, we happen to have them for you. Why do you have those? What non-nefarious use case is there for them? What the hell? Anyway, a couple of days later, I start receiving text messages from Tim Remington. At first, they were innocuous Bible messages, but then he started threatening me. He sent messages talking about their power and other things. He did all of this through Bible verses so it would not look suspicious. I ignored everything until he sent one final text message which simply said angels. I thought nothing of it until helicopters started flying around my house all day and all night. At this point, I knew I was in trouble. I knew I needed to contact them, so I made an appointment to meet John Padula for a coffee. Little did I know he had no intention of meeting me. After making the appointment to meet John, something very bizarre happened. I received the most... Okay. If you watched me react to this the first time, because we have covered this lightly on the channel, this is where it starts to get very strange, and I'll do my best to just read it and not laugh or make jokes. After making the appointment to meet John, something very bizarre happened. I received the most unnatural erection I've ever had. It felt like someone was manually pumping blood into my penis. I don't know how else to describe it. Immediately after that, a song began playing in my mind. The lyrics went, "Sister, sister, he's just a plaything. We want to make him stay up all night." I've never heard this song before, and I had no idea what it meant. I tried to ignore it and kept searching for jobs. A few minutes later, the song quit playing. Nothing else happened until I tried to go to sleep that night. As soon as I got into bed, the song started again. "Sister, sister, he's just a plaything." Sorry, I don't know why that keeps going dark. "We want to make him stay up all night." As it turned out, they weren't kidding. I got literally 0 minutes of sleep that night. Every time I started to drift off, I was woken up violently, then the song would play. When the sun came up, I gave up on trying to sleep and got out of bed. I was relieved at first because the song had quit playing. I thought the torture was over until a voice entered my mind. The voice said, "You're going to be uncomfortable. All you have to do is breathe." I sat there wondering what this meant until the voice spoke again. It told me I was going to be sacrificed like Jesus and get beheaded. This threw me into a complete panic. Understandable. My heart began racing and I started to have a mental breakdown. Understandable. A few minutes later, some man knocked on my door. I answered and he gave me a pamphlet talking about the sacrifice of Jesus. Now, look, I just want to say, if I was hearing this song in my head, "Sister, sister, he's just a plaything. We want to make him stay up all night," and I couldn't sleep, and I was getting woken up violently and hearing voices in my head saying I'm going to be sacrificed like Jesus and be beheaded, all while having a raging erection, I would not be answering the door, okay, to anyone. I would probably be hiding behind the couch with the biggest knife I could find. But hey, that's just me. It's just me. A few minutes later, some man knocked on the door. I answered and he gave me a pamphlet talking about the sacrifice of Jesus. My mind started racing out of control and I became completely delirious. I thought for sure I was going to die. My thoughts shifted to my family and all I could think about was seeing them again. They were in Albuquerque at the time, so I decided to buy a one-way ticket there. Good idea, bro. Go to your family, 100%. When I reached the Spokane airport, that's probably not how you say it, but there we go. My panic subsided. Everything was fine until I got on the plane to Albuquerque. I sat next to this huge man who kept telling me telepathically that he was going to crash the plane. Fantastic. Every time he spoke, he would sniff emphatically. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there trying to stay as calm as possible. The man became angry about this and started touching my leg. The second he touched me, I could feel him inside my mind. This caused me to panic until I was on the verge of causing a scene. Before I did anything, he told me to calm down. "You did a great job. You passed. Go enjoy your family. We have a job waiting for you when you get back." I thanked him and felt slightly relieved, but I had no intention of contacting him at all. My only thought was to get as far away from him as possible. Excuse me. After getting off the plane, I headed to the baggage claim. A huge group of them surrounded. Oh no, that's right over the thing. A huge group of them surrounded me there. I watched them cautiously. Then they all began sniffing at me. The sniff is something they do all the time. I think it has something to do with dominance. When I finally got my bag, I left the airport as fast as I could. My parents were right outside waiting to pick me up. I was so happy to see them again. I gave them big hugs and told them how much I love them. This was my last happy moment in Albuquerque, however. They followed us everywhere we went after that. Whenever I saw one, they would sniff at me to let me know it was them. They would also smile, laugh, and stick their tongues out. Now, I won't lie, this does have like shades of schizo riddled through it. I do agree, it does, but just, again, just hang in there and reserve judgment. As time went on, they started coaxing me to go outside alone. I was scared to death they would kill me, so I refused. Eventually, they threatened to harm my family, which caused me to give in to them. I told them I would do whatever they want if they left my family alone. They responded by saying, "Go to church." I knew they meant the altar, so I agreed when I got back. I agreed to go when I got back. Apologies. When I went to the altar for the first time, the people acted very strange. Yep, that's just church, bro. Kidding. But kind of. Depends where you go. It was unhuman. As I walked into the sermon room, everyone stared at me and began sniffing emphatically. Needless to say, I was scared as hell, but I took a seat. When the service began, a man came and sat down next to me. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. A man came and sat down next to me. A man came and sat down next to me. After he sat down, I began smelling something. It was a smell I had never smelt before. The only thing I can compare it to is a reptile and vinegar. Now, this was a detail that came out in the first watch through that we did of this story. And I said, like, what the hell is that? Like, what does a reptile smell like? And then a whole bunch of people who have like pet bearded dragons and pet lizards in the chat were like, no, lizards have a smell. So there you go. Apparently lizards have a smell, and add in a little bit of vinegar and you've got yourself a reptilian shapeshifter. After smelling it, I became very uncomfortable. I tried to remain calm and I just sat there quietly until the service was over. When the service ended, they said, "You can leave now." After that, I knew I wasn't dealing with the government anymore. I realized that whoever I was dealing with was extraterrestrial, so I became very scared. Okay. It's starting to heat up now. Yep, vinegary snakes. Don't you love them? Don't you love them? All right, let's just catch up on a couple of super chats here so we don't get too far behind. Rain says, "The sound of freedom will change your worldview. Please watch, everyone." Mel Gibson and Tim Ballard. It's all connected. A thread Polarity is yet to touch on. Child trafficking and adrenochrome. Okay, bro. We'll add it to the movie list. Well, I might just check that, it's okay to watch. But if it is, we'll add it to the movie night list for sure. Rog, you little freak, thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate you. Zach Beach gifted 5 memberships. Zach, you are just the GOAT every single stream. Thank you very much. John Anthony gifted 10. John, man, you guys are generous tonight. Thank you very much, John. You are a legend. Let's get some love for Zach and John in the chat. And brother Rambro has gifted a membership as well. Rambro, you are a legend, sir. Thank you very much. And Barbados celebrating 2 months as a member. Legend. Legends, you guys are just unmatched. Best community on YouTube. Let's keep going. I received no further instructions from them after that, so I began applying for jobs again. Even though I had done exactly as I was told, they still followed me everywhere I went. As time went on, they started harassing me day and night. I began to hear voices more often, and I began to hallucinate things that I knew weren't real. They also started playing with me sexually. Both the males and the females would play out their sexual fantasies in my mind, and that has just covered up my read through. Yeah. This came with random and uncontrollable erections as well as extreme anal stimulation. Yeah. This is part of the story. Lots of it too. Lots of it. The harassment continued for weeks and intensified as time went on. I did my absolute best to maintain my sanity and tried to avoid them. This worked for a while, but eventually I had a huge meltdown one day. A huge meltdown. One day I was in the bakery at Safeway when I got surrounded by a bunch of old men. Some of them looked at me and sniffed, so I knew it was them. They started stimulating my penis and anus simultaneously, then they spoke aggressively. By the way, I'm not one. I just have a runny nose. I swear. Your anus is safe. Don't worry. I just have a runny nose. Humans are nothing more than a result of successful genetic experiment. You are a threat to the way these people think, and you can no longer be free in society. Your life is over. You are nothing but a toy. Your purpose now is to suck their penis. Okay. They continued to say other explicit things, but they were so obscene. I won't repeat them here. Before they finished talking, I became enraged. It took every ounce of willpower that I had to not kill them. I left the store and tried to calm down, but it only got worse. The rest of the night, they continually stimulated my penis and I couldn't stop ejaculating. I hate it when that happens. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. It got to the point where I was in a serious pain. They finally stopped after I broke down and became completely distraught. I knew I couldn't take anymore, so I attempted to delete myself. I filled a charcoal grill with lit coals, put it in my car, and rolled up the windows. I reclined my seat, laid there calmly, and then fell asleep. I should have died, but they woke me up in an extreme panic, which caused me to get out the car. As I slowly regained consciousness, I felt very upset to still be alive. I had no clue where to go at that point, so I decided to check myself into the VA. They shipped me straight to the mental ward and I was admitted. Nothing improved while I was there. The medication they gave me did absolutely nothing, and I just sat there surrounded by a bunch of psychotic people and became exasperated. I knew their goal was to ruin my life by making me into a crazy person. I became determined not to let that happen, and I started fighting back. Just to entertain this for a moment, how many people in Hollywood or around that sphere who begin to talk about things like this or similar, things in this kind of realm of the realm of shapeshifters or satanic abuse or ritual cults, global elite, the people who generally talk about this always become crazy people. And is it just not kind of weird that everyone who sort of seems to be in and around a lot of this very specific group of people or industries, they all seem to go crazy with the same hallucination? That's crazy. It's crazy how no native people went crazy with that hallucination, or people who are removed from Western society don't happen to come out and be like, hey, the people running this place are lizards. Do you reckon Genghis Khan or anyone around Genghis Khan just started flipping out and saying that? Or I don't know. What do you guys reckon? That's kind of weird, huh? Probably just coincidence though. Just a coincidence. Where were we? After leaving, no. Wait, where are we? Sorry. Yeah, here we are. After leaving the VA, everything I tried to do with my life was sabotaged. They didn't want me dead, but they were going to let me live. In desperation, I went back to the altar to ask them what they wanted from me. I didn't know what else to do. Let me just read this small text here. Before I tell you their reply, I need to make an important caveat here. I had endured so much abuse by this time that I was numb to them. The details of what they've done to me aren't essential to the story, so I won't include them here. If you want to know more about what I've been through or about them, just write me. Just realize I've been tortured more than a prisoner of war. And look, this is an interesting detail here. This guy is still alive and he's in a prison somewhere in Idaho. This guy's still around. He's just in prison still for shooting this reptile, apparently, who just ate 6 hollow point rounds and just got on with it like he just scraped his knees. Anyway, their response was, "We want you as our sex slave." Thinking they were serious, I sat there waiting for them to do something. All they did was say, "Keep coming to church." So I did. After a few more services, I found myself talking to Tim Remington face to face. He was telling me that I should consider becoming a minister. We were in mid-conversation when he suddenly revealed himself to me. I have no clue how he did it, but it looked as if his human face became his real face. It happened for only 1 to 2 seconds, but I was able to draw a sketch of what I saw, and he's attached that as well for us to look at. His eyes really stood out, so they captured my attention. They were huge and bulging. The eyelids were darker green, and the irises were yellow-brown with slit pupils. After witnessing this, nothing else happened. I continued attending the altar for a few more services, waiting for them to do something. They did nothing except for tell me to submit and surrender. I had no clue what they meant, so I left the church and never went back. August 2015, present time of writing this. After leaving the altar, they gave me some breathing room. They held back on their harassment and I began to recover. I decided to make one final attempt at a normal life by pursuing a career as a pharmacist. I started taking classes at NIC to finish up the prereqs I needed. I also started volunteering at a local pharmacy. Unfortunately, they followed me to school. There were several of them in every class I took. They made it impossible for me to study and they continually harassed me, especially while I took tests. Even with all of this going on, I still somehow managed to get an A in A&P during the fall semester. Sadly, my success was short-lived. The pressure this semester, in spring 2016, is far too intense. Every time I go to class, they start manipulating my brain until I go into a blind rage. Sometimes they suppress my brain until I begin to black out. They also manipulate my heart rate and blood flow and flood my body with adrenaline over and over again, making me extremely uncomfortable. The females stimulate my penis while they are close, and the males stimulate my anus. It's incredibly exhausting. I struggled to pass my tests, so they couldn't blame this on me falling out of school. I want to continue, but I simply cannot. Every moment I spend in the classroom is absolute torture. The classes themselves are extremely difficult without all the added pressure. The worst part is I received an interview for ISU's pharmacy program. See the personal documents. That's what we looked at earlier. Since I cannot continue with the classes, there is no reason to go to the interview. My chance at a normal life has been ruined. They've also deprived me of sleep, so I don't have the strength to continue. I was too smart for my own good, so they decided to remove me from society. They were worried that I might change the way other people think, which could lead to problems. Problems in the form of scientific revolutions. If we get much smarter as a species, we are going to become a threat to their existence. If you talk to me in person, you will see that I'm not crazy at all. The Martians are just so good at hiding in plain sight that no one would know that they exist unless they revealed themselves. They are able to fool us so well that what I'm saying sounds impossible. However, they are 100% real. Realize their technology is millions of years ahead of ours. Think about that for a second. Think about the advancement we have made in the last 100 years. Once you've done that, try to imagine what millions of years of technology would look like. The president is well aware of them, which is why I wrote him a personal letter. I hope he does something about it. I've done nothing wrong to deserve what's happened to me. I tried literally everything to find a job, and they sabotaged me at every corner. Initially, I thought the right thing to do was kill myself. After attempting to do that twice, it became clear they weren't going to let me die easily. My last resort was to take actions to bring this to the public's attention. I hope something good comes of it. I just realize good comes of it. Just realize that I'm a good person and I'm completely innocent. Also realize that the people I ended are not what you think. Read the Martian technology to understand. And that's what we're going to get to in a moment. And just to make it very clear, Tim and John were not wild human beings. Wild human equals normal people like you and I. Tim and John equal minds were controlled from birth by Martians. Okay. So, sorry. He also says, it's hard to imagine, I know. Nonetheless, it's all true. Why would I give up a career as a pharmacist to do this? I left out many details from my story. I wanted to write only the most critical events in order to make it coherent. If you want to know more, like how I discovered there are multiple species of them, feel free to write me. So this is basically the last thing that he wrote before he went off and put at least 5 or 6 hollow point rounds into this person, and knowing that he would then end up in prison after this. And I guess he had just given up on that, on any other future for himself. So he's basically putting this out here to say, if you want to know more, like, write to me in prison. So this gets us on to the next section now, which is like, I guess him just answering what he thinks would be like a general Q&A or some general questions that people might have. Why would aliens hide in a church? The same reason terrorists hide in mosques. If you're doing very bad things and you want to avoid getting caught, you will put up a front to make yourself look like a good person. Now, I don't know about that example that he used there. I feel like he's generalizing a little bit there. But I think the actual point he's making in that bad people pretend that like they are doing something righteous or doing something good is like, you know, the old, that's straight out of the old playbook. You know what I mean? That's been doing that for a long time. How do you know about their technology? I've seen them use it, and they have talked to me about it. This was how I learned about their breeding stock of remote control humans. Physically, their humans are no different than us. They just lack a mind of their own. Now, I feel like I might know a few of these reptiles, actually. Why would they tell you so much? They value me because I'm smart. They were also very confident they could take control of my mind. It turns out they couldn't. Anyway, in the interim, some of us developed a personal relationship. They are very arrogant, so they told me much more than they should have. This allowed me to understand some of the things that they do. What else have you seen? I've seen them make things appear out of nowhere. One time I was sitting on a couch and a dollar bill appeared on my lap. Another time while I was driving, they made a paper bag appear in my passenger seat. They used random unsuspecting items so no one would think anything of it. I was alone both times that this happened. I'm pretty sure they can pop in and out of this dimension based on other things that I've seen. I'm also sure they can overlap our reality with an alternate dimension. I say this because I've gone into stores where I know the employees, and suddenly there are new employees who I've never seen before. Now, this part's really interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, the whole thing about making things appear reminds me of things that Nathaniel Gillis talked about when I interviewed him on the channel. Obviously, he has a different explanation for what he believes the phenomenon is and what this sort of interdimensional entity is that's sort of interacting or manipulating us. He has like a different way of explaining it. But again, like I've said so many times on the channel, I feel like it's so easy to get caught up in the semantics of when we try to label too many things. Then we start arguing amongst each other that like, no, it's all demonic. No, it's a reptile species. No, it's demons. If we can just like stop arguing over who's got the semantics correct, we could all agree that there is some kind of negative intelligence here that seems to be messing with us. And I think if we could all agree on that and then progress forward from there and stop trying to label the things we don't actually understand, we could potentially actually make some ground rather than trying to be like, no, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I think we all kind of get what's going on here. Let's just stop trying to perfect it and move forward and try to see what we can do about it. The other interesting part is him saying about overlapping different realities, and that he went into a store where he knew that there were employees and suddenly there were all new ones there who he's never seen before. This is almost an identical story to one of the experiences in the 1966 Westall mass UFO sighting in Melbourne, Australia. She's interviewed, so she was probably like a 12-year-old girl, give or take, like early high school, late primary school, when the Westall sighting happened. And one of the girls that she was with who saw the UFO fainted. And, after the Air Force kind of came to their school and told them all that they weren't allowed to speak and they all had to be silent and whatever, about like a week later, she went to her friend's house. And again, this is in like 66. So there's no, people aren't, you ride your bike to your friend's house when you want to go talk to them. So she went to her friend's house to go see how she was doing, the one that passed out, and she hadn't seen her since. And there was a whole other family there that she had never seen before. And they were like, no, don't know who you're talking about. They don't live here. And she was like, this is my friend from school who I would go and hang out with like regularly. And they're acting like they've always lived there. And she's telling this story in like 2015 on Channel 10 News in Australia. I've covered the clip on the channel before, but I just found that it's interesting because it's basically like the exact same thing happening. Sorry, did we skip a page there? No, the page doesn't want to turn. That's okay. Some of the other... It's okay. It's okay. We can work with this. I don't want to click it again. Yep, because patience is a virtue. Some of the other things I've seen are so strange, I literally cannot describe them. This all makes sense, though. Their technology is millions of years ahead of ours, so it should be incomprehensible to us. Why did they target you? They started following me after I encountered the being through meditation. Since my mind was so expanded from the experience, they deemed me a threat to the rest of society. They thought I would change the way people think, so they decided to remove me from society. I began to have profound thoughts about genetics while I was at graduate school, which is another factor. If certain ways of thinking are allowed to exist, revolutions will take place. They could not afford for us to have a revolution in genetics. If we did, we would eliminate diseases, cancers, and many other things that plague us. They need us to remain ignorant and continue struggling. Otherwise, we will become a threat to them. Now, man, doesn't that answer just hit hard on so many levels? First of all, like, they don't want us to have a revolution around genetics. Like, the first thing I think of is like how we're told that like 70% of our DNA is just junk. Don't worry about it. It's just junk. Yes, you are like the most incredible biological supercomputer ever to exist or known to us, but most of you is just junk. Don't worry about it. Did you know the football starts at 7 and followed by Love Island, by the way? Go and eat your processed food, put the fluoride in your toothpaste, and shut the fuck up. Okay? Please. It's just junk. Don't worry about it. And there was something else there. Also, I just think it's interesting that, there is so much, like Epstein was so fascinated with this topic too. And, and like even Michael Herrera has talked about the fact that like there are cancer curing technologies out there, but it can't be public. It makes me wonder, like, if, some of these people are like the reason why this can't be made public. Actually, you know what? I don't want to spoil that because we're going to save that. I'll save that point for the end of the show. Rock and Randall says, Josh, if you are hiding in the corner with a veiny python and a knife, which hand do you use to clutch the python? Josh, if you're hiding in the corner with a veiny python and a knife, use to clutch the python. Bro, I'm not. What do you mean? Am I already holding the python? I don't know, bro. I'm confused. Reptilian tier list when? Good idea, Mark. We might actually have one coming up soon. And Maggie, thank you very much for the sticker. Let's continue. So this is Kyle's letter that he wrote to the president at the time, which was Barack Obama, I believe. It says, and it's just kind of dot points. And his little note up the top in small text says, this will not make sense unless you are the president of or one of his close friends. If this doesn't pertain to you, please ignore it. I'll read it anyway just because it's short. We'll just kind of glaze over it. Mr. President, I want to thank you for your sacrifice to the country. It's very upsetting to hear you talk about the things they do to you. Why do you let them? I suppose you have no other choice. I've been struggling with them myself for over a year now. I had nothing to lose, so I chose this instead. I could never tolerate that much abuse. I hope you don't take any of their threats too seriously. Everything is a game to them. Realize they consider the entire human race a plaything, including you. They brag to me about what they do to you. I'm sure you already know, but he doesn't love you. Their brains... He's not talking about Big Mike, is he? Sorry. Their brains don't even work that way. I don't know you personally, but they've shown me a lot about you. You're an amazing person. I hope you stop letting them humiliate you. Why be afraid to retaliate? Kennedy wasn't. Shout out to JFK. It's time someone took a stand to end this nonsense. Can you think of a better legacy than that? Fair point. What's worse, having everyone know the reality of the situation or watching some of our best and brightest become slaves? I wish you the very best for the remainder of the presidency. If you're still in there, stay strong. Interesting. Some interesting questions there. Let's get on with the next part. Okay. This is where I said we might have a little tier list here. It's not quite a tier list, but it's interesting, right? Because this is Kyle Odom giving us a list of noteworthy Martians. So people in government and leadership who are either, like he said at the start, humans that are used by the Martians by like a mind control, people who don't have a mind of their own, or what was the other term that he used? Humans that are like bred for purpose to play these roles in society, I believe it was. And at the bottom here, it just says, this is by no means an all-inclusive list. Martians are ubiquitous. They exist at every level of society in every nation. Some have blue-collar jobs, while others occupy positions of power. They control our government, our military, and corporate America as well. They keep track of every wild human on the planet and manage us like animals in a zoo. Our freedom is a carefully crafted illusion. Now, someone recently said that, and his name rhymes with Matthew Crown. Basically said that word for word. And, he says that they control our government, our military, and corporate America as well. Maybe that's what the whole beware of the military-industrial complex thing was about, right? And when JFK tried to get a handle on it, he got the old Alt Control Delete. What a coincidence. So this is a list of people that he has said US senators that are non-human or occupied by something non-human. A list of US House representatives, which is so big that at the end it just says "and more." And then Israeli leadership. Now that's crazy. What's an Israel list doing on a document about America? What are you guys doing here? Anyway, we go to the bottom of this one, and it says, at the bottom of the Israel one, it says, and every single prime minister since 1948, which is when Israel was established. And then it says there are many others from Israel, too many to list. That's crazy, bro. What are you guys doing here? And why are there so many of you? And why are you every single prime minister? But anyway, what I decided to do was just pull up like a little schizophrenic mood board for each of these columns here. So I basically just grabbed the top like 8 or 9 people and just grabbed a picture of them just so we could have a look at them. This is the US Senator list. Now, I'll get rid of myself so you guys can see a little bit better. And what I'll do as well, and like, how do you guys feel about this? Are we getting reptile vibes here? I mean, Roy Blunt's definitely got some alligator in him for sure. I'll let you guys just have a little gaze at this while I try to make you guys a bit smaller. Yes, there we go. So you guys can see a little bit better. Because you guys were in front of a king reptile, and I wanted you guys to make sure we see that because, wow, ain't that something? Ain't that something? They found him in a swamp somewhere in Louisiana, I think. Anyway, that's the senator list. Next up, we've got the House of Reps. So again, I didn't really like think too much when I grabbed these. I just basically grabbed like the top ones that were in each list. So I don't know any of these people. I just thought it would be interesting to put some faces to these names purely just to add some context to the manifesto. But you know, there is definitely a few interesting looking characters in here for sure. Let me just move that one more time so you guys can see Gary Palmer, who's, you know, not too reptile looking. Shout out to him. Hopefully, you know, he's one of the good guys, but who knows? And then we've got the Israel leadership. Now, what was interesting actually is that you'll notice that in all of these ones, all I had to do was just Google their name. Just Google their name, and Google provided me with like a full picture and like detail. But none of the Israel ones did that. I had to go to Google Images to find all of these people, which, you know, probably nothing. Or they're just trying to suppress their reptile identity. I don't know. It could just be a coincidence, but who knows? But yeah, these are the Israeli ones. Shimon Solomon, not the most Arabic-looking fella, but, you know, who knows? Who knows what that's about? But look, I just thought we'd add this in just for a little bit of context, just to spice it up a little bit. But I think we can continue now. So this is the next section. This is early civilizations and the Bible. Genetic evidence, and this is where I really started to get invested in this for sure. Let me just hit this. Anti-Semitic, that sounds, yeah. What isn't these days? What isn't? Genetic evidence has shown that modern humans originated in Africa 200,000 years ago. Before civilization, we lived in tribes of hunter-gatherers. The hunter-gatherer lifestyle dominated for tens of thousands of years. As our ancestors began to master their environment, they migrated out of Africa. Sorry, let me just fix this up a little bit. They migrated out of Africa. They spread out into Europe and Asia, then began settling near bodies of water. Eventually, we discovered agriculture, which led to the formation of the first civilizations. Around 3800 BC, there was an ancient Mesopotamian city called Ur. Ur was one of the most important city-states of that time period. It was located near the mouth of the Euphrates on the Persian Gulf. It was the southernmost Mesopotamian city, which left it exposed. This location on the outskirts of the ancient world made Ur an ideal place for Martians to visit. At least 2 species of Martians visited Ur. which was documented by its inhabitants. I was contacted by both of these species. The two species are amphibian humanoids and reptilian humanoids. The humans that were living in created figurines to document what they had seen. If you search for Mesopotamia or you will find the sculptures these people made. Some of them depict amphibian humanoids, others depict reptilian humanoids. They also made many figurines of people with gigantic eyes. I'm not sure what the people with gigantic eyes are. Okay, so I'll pull these up now. Again, if you've watched the channel for a little while, we've talked about these in many other cases before. But we'll pull them up just so for anyone who hasn't seen them before, because they are quite amazing, to be honest. That these were found in Mesopotamia. Hang on, sorry. And I mean, look at these things. It's loading. Okay, that's not a good one. These things clearly have some kind of like long eyes, long snouts. And I mean, we're talking about clay statues here that were made 4,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago or something like this. So, it's not the most detailed and clear, but I think there's enough in it to at least say that looks kind of like a humanoid crocodile or something like that. And, I don't know, how much it's worth mentioning as well, but like you do often see in like Egyptian hieroglyphs, often there are humanoid gods depicted. Like, you've got Thoth, you've got Osiris, and they have these like bird heads, but you do also see ones with like a crocodile head as well. Again, I'm not saying it's this, but it's just something that is interesting. And it comes from the same part of the world as well. There's obviously something significant about, Mesopotamia, Uruk, all these places, ancient Egypt, all of these places, Assyria. What do we got? Yeah, I guess we're kind of looking at the same ones over and over now. But you guys get the point. I mean, these things are kind of interesting. Very interesting, I would say. Josh, look up the Egyptian god Sobek. Yes, I believe that is the one I'm speaking of. That is the crocodile god, I believe. We can probably Egyptian. Let's get a quick look at Sobek here. There we go. Egyptian god Sobek. It's probably just coincidence number 4,566, though. Let's be real. Stop being a conspiracy theorist, guys. This is all actually just a coincidence, and you're the tinfoil hat psychopath. Anyway, let's get on with the read through. God was a concept created by the Martians to control the minds of primitive man. Read The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins if you need convincing. Also check godisimaginary.com. Jesus was a megalomaniac fraud, a liar and a jerk. He was no savior, and he certainly wasn't unique. During Jesus' time, many other people emerged claiming to be the savior of all mankind. The Martians saw this as a problem for their Jewish traditions. Okay. Interesting. The Martians are Jews. That's crazy. I didn't see that one coming. That's straight out of left field. Where were we? That threw me. The Martians saw this as a problem for their Jewish tradition, so they decided to use Jesus to their advantage. If they sacrificed Jesus as the Messiah, then people would stop proclaiming themselves to be a savior. Voila, problem solved. Interesting. And look, for anyone who like really loves Jesus, don't be upset. I'm not reading this as like a gospel. We're just reading someone's manifesto and someone's take on life here. I would encourage you to hopefully not be offended by this and just still explore it with an open mind. Because, maybe he got a few things wrong. It would be easy to say if he really experienced this, even if it was real, there would probably be some level of like psychosis and delusion that came with it. So, keep an open mind. The only good thing religion has ever brought us was traditions. Traditions bring us together as families, as friends, and as a species. I definitely agree with that. One more thing. God existing as a trinity comes from the Martians. Write me if you want to know more. Our plight. And he says, I didn't have time to finish this. We are going to have peace even if we fight for it. That's a quote by Dwight Eisenhower. And then from John F. Kennedy, Peace is a daily, a weekly, a monthly process, gradually changing opinions, slowly eroding old barriers, quietly building new structures. Every president finds out that Martians are real. President Eisenhower warned us about them. President Kennedy stood up against them. They are the reason we have so many languages and so many nations. They constantly pit nations against each other, which makes a lot of sense. If we are constantly at war with each other, we'll never make progress as a species. This is how they maintain complete and absolute control. Checks out. It checks out. Have you ever wondered why a war zone is also known as a theater? It's because war is entertainment. That's why. I've personally never heard that. I've never heard that the war zone is a theater, but, you know, that's just me. Entertainment for whom? The Martians. They enjoy watching conflict, they enjoy watching us suffer, and they enjoy watching death. It is one of their most basic needs. When you know about their brain, this makes perfect sense. They try to keep us in constant state of fear by filling the news with horror stories. This is another one of their most basic control mechanism. Now that checks out. They constantly stir up controversy to keep us divided. Black Lives Matter, violence against police, Islam versus Christianity, immigrants taking our jobs, Zika virus. Yes, they can create viruses. This was pre-COVID, by the way, that he wrote this too. Some of the top officials in our government military are their pawns. The Martians rape them sexually and force them to do whatever else they want. Ask President Obama if you don't believe me. To Martians, humans are nothing more than a plaything. You might be wondering, why do they do this to us? It's because we rejected them many times. In ancient Mesopotamia, they tried to live among us. It never worked. It never worked out no matter how many times they tried. This caused them to develop extreme animosity towards us. Consequently, they have a vendetta against every wild human. The actual Martians themselves have zero self-esteem. This is why they live vicariously as humans. They can also take control of wild human minds. I've seen them do this to multiple people, and they've done it to me as well. The only time they are able to take control of my mind is when they wake me up in the middle of the night. They make me say extremely strange things and flail my body parts around like a puppet. They tried to take complete control of my mind on multiple occasions while I was at school. They were never able to. This angered them severely, which is why they caused me to drop out of school. I have no options left. They have no intention of letting me live a life. Sounds like Dylan Borland. Did anyone else think of that? When Dylan Borland spoke about how, first of all, how he woke up in the middle of the night feeling like he wanted to end his life, and that is so against his faith, against something that he would never ever do, but he literally woke up in the middle of the night and was woke up and just wanted to go and do it, and then kind of snapped out of it. And interestingly, in that same interview, Dylan Borland spoke about the idea that, you know, people who are in these programs, and, you know, I've said before that it feels like a non-human intelligence is running the military, and that this is what Kyle Odom is saying. Dylan Borland was saying that people could be in these programs working on a craft and kind of doing things without consciously knowing that they're actually doing them. Like they're literally under some form of mind control. Like a lot of this checks out with things that we've already heard and already know from people who don't necessarily have crazy attached to them. But as always, as soon as you start talking about reptilians, it just comes with this very strange automatic crazy label, which to me is so crazy because it's like, aren't we talking about 7-foot praying mantises ripping our face off by the guy who was in charge of nuclear weapons? Aren't we talking about Nordics coming down, like Nordic people who look like us, who are like advanced humans? We're talking about greys who live underground who are called ant people. But reptilians are, now you're just being silly. Now you're just being a little bit too silly. You know what I mean? Like, that's weird to me. Why? Who created that line and why? It's just odd. Anyway, Martian brain and behavior. I've observed their behavior for almost a year now. Consequently, I've been able to make several deductions about them. The first deduction is based on their primary characteristics, which include they are hypersexual, they are hyper-aggressive, they are fearful, and paranoid. Some of the things that David Icke was talking about in the video earlier. In the human brain, the amygdala is responsible for all of these characteristics. Therefore, Martians must have an analogous structure, and it must be greatly enlarged. The morphology of their brain is also markedly different than ours. I know this because I've seen what the amphibian humanoids look like. The males are extremely aggressive. In their society, there is only one thing, and that is power. Whoever is the smartest, biggest, and strongest wins. One time, I was talking to a young male who kept trying to intimidate and scare me. He saw that I was still confident in myself and immediately became discouraged. He stopped what he was doing and said, "You think you're better than me," then hung his head and walked away. I told him that wasn't true, but he wouldn't listen. After this, every time I encountered one of the males in public, they would attack me mentally until they destroyed my self-esteem. They did this because they're scared to death of my intelligence. The only way they have the confidence to talk to me is if I'm scared for my life or completely despondent. And this is why I think, not just because of this, but like you can't give in to fear. Because if we were to sort of run off the coattails of the shows we've been doing this week about the power of belief, I really do think there is something to the fact of like if something, and obviously we're speaking about things that are trying to instill fear in us intentionally. Like if I was to say, go to war, go to the front line of war, and if you're not scared, it won't be scary. Like that's different. What I'm saying is if there is some kind of like person or entity or something is trying to instill fear into you, it only works if you like submit to it, right? Like your belief is what gives it the power. And I think, and like that's almost what Kyle is saying here, in that like with these entities, if you just like don't give in to the fear and scare tactics, their power, like if that's all they have. Like once you let go of that, they're basically useless, which resonates with me. To the males, everything is black or white. Okay, so they're retarded. No, I'm just kidding. There is no middle ground. They are power-hungry megalomaniacs obsessed with control. If they are not 100% in control of every situation, they panic. If something happens that they aren't anticipating, they get very upset. They hate surprises. I know this because I was smart enough to trick them a few times. To recap, the males are maniacal, obsessed with sex, extremely aggressive, fearful and paranoid, power-hungry, obsessed with control. Oh, so you're saying literally all of the key points that David Icke listed about what was that weird dude's name? Where is he?
So you have
Ted Heath, this guy. So you're saying that they're just everything that this guy apparently was, and who was also the prime minister, by the way. And then, like Jimmy Savile, dies, and what do you know? He's a prolific pedophile. Not another one. Sorry. Sounds familiar? Who else do you know that has these characteristics? If you answered God from the Bible, you are correct. Okay, don't get offended. Martians are responsible for the God myth. Martians may have created humans as they claimed, but they are certainly not gods themselves. They are just another intelligent species that evolved on a neighboring planet. There is no God. There is no heaven. There is no hell. Earth is as close to heaven as we'll ever get, and we are letting the Martians ruin it. They are going to destroy Earth just like they destroyed Mars if we let them. Our survival rests in their hands for the time being. Now that little part there, again, if you watched yesterday's show, we did that little review looking at Mars, looking at all the places on Earth that seem to be very renowned for paranormal activity, UFO sightings, abductions, death, war. Okay, they all look the same, and maybe it could be something else, and maybe you're right. But I do think that's interesting that when you go look at where Mesopotamia was and is, where Israel is, where the southwestern part of the United States is, where Peru is, where the middle of Australia and most of Australia, to be fair, is, it all looks pretty similar to Mars. So the people that absolutely like raped and pillaged Mars and then had to go live somewhere else coming here, and now that's slowly happening to this planet, and it's beginning in these places that we can see are starting to look like Mars, and it's slowly spreading over the Earth, literally the same way rot would spread over a fruit. And it's just slow, like or a leaf on a plant. It's just slowly dying and eating away at the planet until the whole planet looks just like Mars. I don't know, probably nothing. Probably just take me to a hospital. Okay, Origins Part 1. In order to talk about life on Mars, first we need to discuss where the solar system came from. Before our sun or any of the other planets existed, our solar system was part of a giant molecular cloud. The birth of our solar system began when a gravitational disturbance occurred inside this cloud. As gravity took over, the mass of the molecular cloud began collapsing on itself, which led to the formation of our sun. As the sun formed, a huge mass of dust began collapsing around it, which flattened out into a protoplanetary disk. The material of the protoplanetary disk then began to accrete and coalesce. This process gradually led to the formation of the planets and moons and asteroids and comets in our solar system. During this time, the solar system was an incredibly hot place. The surface of the rocky planets, Earth and Mars, was molten. The early solar system was also swarming with comets and asteroids, which constantly bombarded the planets and their moons. The timescales of these events were massive, occurring over billions of years. In order to understand Origins Part 2, you have to understand the fundamentals of cosmology, which we all obviously do because we all watch Polarity and we're tapped in, okay? We can skip the learning and just tap into the wider field of consciousness that holds the Akashic records and download all of that knowledge instantly and continue with Part 2. Once you feel comfortable with the basics of cosmology, which we now all do, let's continue from where we left off. You'll recall that Earth and Mars were molten and being bombarded by asteroids. Earth and Mars developed from the same material, and they are positioned next to each other, so it shouldn't surprise you that their composition is similar. Both have iron cores and both have volcanoes. Because of this, it follows that Mars developed an early atmosphere very similar to Earth's. An atmosphere is one of the key requirements for biological life to exist. The other key ingredient is liquid water. As Mars began to cool down, it started to develop an atmosphere. Since Mars is further from the sun, its surface cooled much faster than Earth's. Eventually, Mars cooled down enough that liquid water could accumulate on its surface. Once this happened, biological life began evolving on Mars. This likely occurred before the Earth even had liquid water. Before we talk about life evolving on Mars, it's important to understand the concept of convergent evolution. Okay, this is where we cooked a little bit yesterday, and I gave you guys a teaser because this is really interesting. The concept of convergent evolution. One of the best examples of convergent evolution comes from mammals. Mammals in Australia evolved into marsupials, whereas mammals in North America evolved into placentals. This is an example of how two isolated populations can evolve similar traits, even though they exist in completely different environments. With this in mind, let's talk about the evolution on Mars. Reptiles and amphibians evolved here on Earth, so convergent evolution tells us they should have first evolved on Mars. For whatever reason, the reptiles and amphibians of Mars developed intelligence while Earth did not. By the time dinosaurs evolved on Earth, the Martians were already a technologically advanced civilization. They were so advanced, they survived their own planet's demise and colonized the Earth. They also converted the moon into a home, and I'm fairly certain they caused the mass extinction of the dinosaurs. How else do you colonize a planet that is covered with the giant monsters who want to eat you? Anyway, there is loads of evidence to back this up. Look into it. Look into the orbit of the moon and the fact that it does not rotate at all. Look into the fact that the moon is hollow. Look into the fact that there are underground bases in mountains and under the oceans. They don't belong to us. They are inhabited by Martians. The truth is out there. It's just submerged in a sea of disinformation. And we've heard a lot of that many, many times, right? First of all, that the truth is out there. It's just buried under a whole bunch of lies. And the things about the moon we've talked about a lot. We've looked into a lot, you know, the weird tidal locking of the moon, the way that it rotates the same way that Earth does. So it looks like it never rotates. The fact that it's hollow, the fact that it rang like a bell, like these are all things that aren't necessarily just rooted in like conspiracy lore. There's like a little bit to that stuff. This is like a newspaper cutout, which I'm actually going to skip, but we will continue reading the actual manifesto. I'm just going to catch up on a couple of super chats quickly. Maggie, thank you very much for the $1. Rain with $50. Rain, my man. Thank you very much, bro. Extremely generous. He says, war exists because the elite and drugged up war spackers refuse to relinquish at the expense of all people, which is why Mars 2.0 is likely to happen. The thing is, though, if Mars is already a planet that was raped and pillaged and destroyed, like how is going back there going to be a way out? I mean, if we are to go by this analogy, it would almost be like we have to get to Venus next. Like that would be the next one along to become ready to be a planet. And if you, I don't know, I mean, look at Mars, look at Venus. Mars definitely looks like an overcooked Earth that's been like used up and dead. And Venus potentially looks like an Earth that is like still prepping, still a bit gassy, still forming up. You know, it maybe needs a couple of moons in there just to balance out the tides and everything. I don't know. I'm obviously talking complete shit here. I don't know what I'm talking about. But to me, it's like Mars looks done, bro. Mars looks finished. Maggie says, thanks for reading this to us, Josh. Saved us having to read this all alone. Love and light weirdos. My pleasure, Maggie. Thank you very much for hanging out. I'm glad you're enjoying it. All right, let's get on to the next part because this is interesting. This is where he gets into the Martian technology and Nikola Tesla. If you wish to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, a famous Nikola Tesla quote. And he goes on to say, Nikola Tesla was one of the most brilliant men of all time. He laid the foundation for modern society by inventing alternating current. If it weren't for his inventions, we would not have any of the luxuries we now take for granted. Tesla was light years ahead of his time in terms of his thinking. Not only did he create AC power, but he also invented radio, discovered electrogravitics, and stumbled upon the waves Martians use to communicate. Sadly, many of his discoveries are forbidden knowledge, so they have been hidden. The species who runs this planet cannot allow us to have the same technology they do. If we did, we would become a threat to their existence. And we're going to touch on this at the end of the show with a clip. This is why Tesla's work was seized by the FBI agents immediately after his death. No one knows what happened to it. Fortunately, Tesla spoke enough about what he discovered that we can still gain a glimpse of what he knew. As Tesla said, the key to everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. If you know anything about physics or chemistry, then you know that everything is composed of atoms. Atoms are composed of smaller particles called protons, neutrons, and electrons. The protons, neutrons, and electrons themselves are composed of even smaller particles and so on. The smaller you get, the stranger things become. Ultimately, matter and everything in the universe can be thought of in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The computer you're reading this on, the chair you're sitting in, even you, everything can be viewed in terms of waves and energy. Keep this fact in mind as you read the rest of this article. The waves Martians use to communicate are something Tesla called non-Hertzian waves. These waves are also known as longitudinal waves or transverse waves. According to Tesla, non-Hertzian waves are much more efficient and reliable than Hertzian waves, also known as electromagnetic waves. They are capable of traveling vast distances with essentially no signal attenuation. Every other type of wave, radio or, for example, loses signal strength the further they travel from the source. You already know this from experience if you've ever tried traveling a long distance in a car. Once you reach a certain distance, you can no longer listen to your local stations. With this distinction out of the way, let's continue by discussing how Tesla discovered Martian communication signals. And I'll have a quick drink. In 1899, Tesla moved to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in Colorado Springs. He built a receiver and transmitter that could send and receive non-Hertzian waves. He installed this equipment on the roof of the hotel and began receiving signals of an unknown origin. He claimed to be talking with Martians, but no one took him seriously. It couldn't make more sense though. If non-Hertzian waves are superior, then it's obvious the Martians would be using them. As Tesla continued with his research, he began to understand the sheer power of wave technology. The following quote demonstrates this. He could alter the size of this planet, control its seasons, guide it along any path he might choose through the depths of the universe. He could make planets collide and produce his suns and stars. His heat and light, his suns and stars, his heat and light. He could originate and develop life in all its infinite forms. And this is Nikola Tesla from Man's Greatest Achievement. It's kind of scary to think about controlling planetary bodies with wave technology. Imagine the devastation that could be caused if it were used for destructive purposes. Say, for example, colonizing a planet. Imagine back in the days of the dinosaurs. The Martians wanted to colonize our planet, but the dinosaurs were in the way. Martians have the technology to harness planetary bodies, so imagine them sending a massive asteroid on a collision course with Earth. Voila, dinosaurs are dead, colonization can commence. Everything in our bodies runs on electrical impulses. Our brains operate over a wide range of electrical frequencies shown here. Everything we experience in life is simply the result of electrical activity. To be more precise, everything we experience is the sequence of a series of action potentials occurring in the central nervous system. Think about that for a second. Every thought, every perception, and every action are all governed by electrical impulses. I won't try to expand on this here, but it's incredibly important to understand the nervous system and how it works. If you care to learn about the nervous system from a video, I highly recommend checking out a crash course on YouTube, and he put in a link there. If our perception occurs due to electrical impulses, it follows that it can be manipulated with the right technology. This is why Martians are able to directly alter our perception. They have the technology. They can trick our brain into visual and auditory hallucinations, smelling, tasting, heart rate fluctuations, erections, and any other CNS event. This provides a full explanation of how they manipulated my penis as described in my story. Read about the science behind an erection here if you're not convinced yet. So as you can see, Tesla was right. Energy, frequency, and vibration allow us to control the world around us. The Martians have known this for eons, and they have used it against us. As I said before, they own a massive stock of humans, which they breed and control from Earth. Since they have the technology to control a central nervous system, they can operate their humans like remote control toys. Unfortunately for us, wild humans can control us too. Unfortunately for us wild humans, they can control us too. Damn. Now there is a lot to unpack in that little section there. First of all, like the whole thing he's saying that, if superior technology comes in the form of these non-Hertzian waves in wave technology, and wave technology can manipulate electrical impulses, and our entire body is made up of them. I mean, I don't know the right term for it, but I know our heart is essentially like help me out, chat, because I know you guys know what I'm trying to say here and what I'm thinking about. Our heart like keeps that. I mean, it beats, right? It's like it's keeping that electrical. It's like sending out the pulse. It's okay, obviously, because that's what it's called, your pulse. Holy shit! You know what I'm saying? It's literally sending out that pulse, and it's like an electrical pulse that just keeps going, and that then affects your nervous system. Like it starts from the pulse. So if they have things that can manipulate that, or even, and this is getting super tinfoil hat, but I mean, we're talking about reptilians, so here we are. People often talk about, like 5G towers, wearing AirPods, wearing wireless headphones, like I am right now. All of this stuff has some kind of like effect on your body and on your mind and on your central nervous system, which is interesting. If the secrets of the universe are in energy, frequency, vibration, like who knows? Maybe these headphones are cooking me up. Maybe that's why I'm struggling with ADHD. 6G now, Josh. Yep, doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. The other thing was where they said they own a massive stock of humans, which they breed and control from birth. This to me sounds like, like cloning, human cloning, which Epstein was like very interested in, and the whole science around like genetics. And I don't know, it's just weird that the people who seem to be involved, people that we hear stories about their eyes turning black, shape-shifting, people who are deeply embedded in around science and political people, we also hear stories about them being interested in cloning and the genetics. Like it's all of these things. Literally all of and he's from Israel, which, is not, I'm just going off the Kyle Odom manifesto. Don't delete me. Don't send a Pine Gap pigeon to my window. I'm just reading the manifesto here. Let's go to the next page. So this is his drawing. This is his depiction of what this church pastor turned into. And I'll just make you guys a tad smaller and I'll read what he said. Huge eyes that stuck out of the sockets, yellow-brown iris, projecting muzzle with 45-degree angled nostrils. Huge mouth, dark green skin. The only part I really saw well was the eyes. So really specific, and also interesting that he's kind of saying, like, I always do find it interesting when people are willing to kind of knock down their own story a little bit and say, oh, look, I'm not too sure about these details, but like I did see this. It's the Grinch. A lot of people said that last time. Maybe like the really old Grinch, but I don't think it really looks like the Jim Carrey Grinch. I mean, maybe a little bit. I can kind of see what you're saying, but I don't know. Next page. So this is the mouth. Okay. Now, I tried to find a picture of this for you guys, but I wasn't able to get it. Do you remember maybe like a year ago? No, it wouldn't have even been a year ago. Sometime this year. Stephen Greer. Do you guys know where I'm going with this? Stephen Greer did a talk somewhere. And when he was talking, he was licking his lips an awful amount. Like an awful amount. And people started making like little close-up videos of him doing it with like the eyes and the mouth being like really big. And the mouth enlarged looked exactly like this picture. Now, look, I'm not trying to say Stephen Greer is a reptilian, but I will say that my ex-girlfriend, who used to watch a lot of this stuff with me and who knew nothing about any of this until I started teaching her, saw Stephen Greer for the first time and was like, that motherfucker is got to be a reptilian. I kid you not. I kid you not. That was just her like honest, just like instinctual reaction to seeing Stephen Greer for the first time. I don't know what that means, but you know, that's what she said. Who knows? Who knows? We should, hey, we always say on the channel, we should trust our gut more, right? We should trust our gut. On this page, he's also written, this is what their teeth look like. I assume okay. It looks like he's written, Elmo rules the world, something they kept saying to me. Elmo rules the world. And then he's made a little like annotation to that and said, I assume they said this because their head looks like a Muppet. Okay, weird one. Again, they only revealed bits and pieces to me and very briefly. Thankfully, I have a photographic memory, so I was able to remember what I saw, although I only remember the general appearance because each time that I saw them, it was very brief. They would smile at me and in stores, yes, they would smile at me in stores and reveal their mouth, eyes, nose, all separately, never together at the same time. Interesting. Interesting. And this is his DD 214. So I feel like, you know, if you guys have been in the UFO space for a while now, you're probably familiar with the DD 214. And this is basically like any kind of whistleblower who comes on a podcast or you know, goes into Congress or whatever. The people interviewing them generally will try to like show or say that they've seen their DD 214 because this is basically like the best sort of like record and evidence that someone is who they say they are, or at least served time in the military. And this is his DD 214 saying that he was an aviation technician, I believe it was, in the US Marine Corps when he said that he was. And that actually wraps up that part of the show. So this brings me to the very last clip here. Now, we've been live. This is perfect. We've been live for about 2 hours, which is great. We're right on schedule. So after everything that we've just heard, right? Everything that we've just heard about the fact that we are potentially being farmed and controlled by a species that is able to manipulate our minds. And by the way, if just by telling you this right now, you wouldn't even know that I'm talking about Kyle Odom, okay? You could just think I'm talking about general topics that are coming out in disclosure at the moment. But we're talking about what Kyle Odom wrote about, okay? I want to show you this clip, which just came out a couple of days ago on the Engaging the Phenomenon podcast with James Iandoli, not to be confused with Landoli, by the way. That is not his name, and we will make sure we get that in on the record. James Iandoli, and this is him talking to Jim Semivan.
I've had people who I know are in the know, and I've mentioned this before, and one of them told me the truth is indigestible. It's not something that we would be able to fully grasp or entertain, and that it's like, you know, it would be like telling somebody something that they can't do anything about, and they don't know what the repercussions of that would be. It's so great. It's so world changing and transformational, and maybe not in a good way, you know? So,
I mean, what could be so jarring? What could be so disruptive? I mean, bless you.
thank you.
Like the idea that we're being visited by another advanced intelligence that's more advanced than us. I mean, do you think, or is it something else?
I think it's much deeper than
I think it's much deeper than that. And can we actually get the? Hang on, bear with me.
Or is it something else?
I think.
He says, I think it's much deeper than that. Lou once mentioned to me, we were chatting about this, and I think I asked Lou one day what he thought, you know, and yeah, that's all we got from that. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because what Jim is getting at here is, I think, what people have coined the terrible truth theory. And people often go like, what could be so terrible? Like, what could be, like, you know, we can handle the truth. Tell us, like, what's going on? What's going on? Well, I've got an answer for you, actually. I've got an answer for you that could definitely pass under the category of like something so terrible that it would destabilize humanity. And it actually checks out extremely well here. with a little detail that he gave. And he says something like, you know, it's he like they're unsure about what the ramifications of it would be. And I don't think, this is just my opinion, by the way, I don't think when people say like they're unsure of what the ramifications would be, I don't think it's actually on how people would handle it. Okay. I think they might know that people would probably freak out. If this is true, if they came out and said, yep, we are, you know, just like V, the original miniseries, we are basically subservient to a Martian species that can appear as human, can control humans, and basically run our world and feed off fear. That's why we've been at war constantly since World War II. That's why we constantly stoke division and fear in all of your media that we pump into your minds every single night through your TVs. That's why this is happening, because we're completely enslaved. So I think when they say that, I mean, I feel like there'd probably still be 5% of people that would be like, yeah, but when does the football start? I think we would still have that. But I think most people would probably freak out and then figure out a way to come to terms with it. However, I think what they are talking about is they don't know the ramifications of, like, how does the game work? Does the game still work for them if we know? Or perhaps if we know and we start going, wait, so you're telling me, like, if I remove all of this fear from my life, if I don't give into this bullshit, if I decide, actually, I'm not going to go to war for some crusty old man who's probably a reptile up in a tower and go and kill another innocent human being for him, if all of people collectively around the world just started to, like, wake up to that idea, would the Martians or whoever is in control be like, you know, it would be like, oh, my, all of my sheep in my pen have gone fucking crazy. Like, they've all caught this disease that I can't fix. I've just got to go put them all down and get new sheep. I have to put them all down and get new sheep because my sheep are fucked. I think that's what they mean. I think that they are worried that if they tell us, it ruins the game for them, and they will be like it's over now. Like, the game doesn't work for them. Our existence is only on their terms, and those terms are not necessarily a positive thing for us. We can find a way to live a positive life within it, but the overall, like, purpose of our existence to them is not positive for us. The same way, like, you know, kind of like, yeah, cows and sheep to us, right? Like, I don't think sheep probably enjoy being dragged in and fucking sheared all the time or turned into a lamb stew, but there are some that can probably get away with having a happy life, and that's just the way it is. And, you know, I think as above, so below. There's probably a more intelligent species here that has a purpose for us, like, you know, doing terrible things to us, just like we do terrible things to animals. And that's just the way life is. And I don't know, I really do think that. And, you know, I mean, I say this today with a lot of conviction because it just seems to make sense. And, you know, I could actually maybe show you guys a video one day that I recorded, and it would have been the very first video I ever uploaded on this channel. And I literally said the exact same theory, and I never uploaded it because I just thought it was a bit too crazy. But if you go back and watch it, I will look so different. It will look so old and shit. And I literally laid out this same theory of the fact that the reason why we're not being told is because it ends the game. And if we end the game, then they might wipe the chessboard and get a whole bunch of new players in. And then that's it for everyone. So it's like disclosure at the possible cost of total annihilation. Play it for us, Josh. You know, I'm actually thinking of doing a I'm going to do an end of the year stream, like a wrap up stream, and basically just kind of like looking back at the year and maybe like looking back at a few like moments or whatever. But the one thing I really want to do is at the start of the year, at New Year's last year, I did a bit in a video where I gave my predictions for the year. So I wanted to watch the predictions and see like if I got anything right, and then make new predictions for the next year, just for a bit of fun. So maybe on that stream when we're kind of just hanging out having fun, we might do that. I might go dig up that video and we can watch it. God, that will be cringy. That would be so cringy. I don't know if I can watch it. It's so painful, but we'll see. We'll see. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Icke Balls says with $20, my man, thank you very much, brother. He says he opens with everything's an atom, but quotes and loves Tesla. He's getting from the Martians, but also from the fence. Interesting. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, bro. Kelletrix says Tickle Me Elmo rules the world. Apparently. And Anomalous Angel with 3 months. Thank you very much, Angel. She says, hi, Josh. In my 80s, my dad used to call the then Treasurer of Australia Lizard Lips. It was a former PM, John Howard. Interesting. And, you know, it wasn't that long ago that on the show I played that clip of only recently of them in some kind of like parliamentary setting of them saying this is a police document with 28 people who are like members of the Australian Senate and Cabinet or whatever. And they're all pedophiles. And one of them was a former Australian Prime Minister. And I'm actually putting together a video about this kind of stuff, like the satanic ritual abuse and that mainly focused on the UK. And I feel like we've probably just got another clip from David Icke to add in there today. So maybe we'll sort of wrap all that up into a bit of a bow and put that out maybe later on in this month. But guys, long stream today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've had fun. They are dark topics and people say they don't like going into them. But, you know, I feel like that is unfortunately how we got here. I feel like ignoring it doesn't make things better. It only allows it to continue. And it is tough to listen to sometimes, whether it's true or whether it's not. But, you know, I try to make it fun and digestible as best as I can. And I hope you guys enjoy it and, you know, you come out of the stream better off than when you started. So, guys, thank you. If you want to keep hanging out, I'm actually going to be playing Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets just to lighten things up a little bit after that in Discord. The link for that is below. It's free for everyone. So come and hang out. And that'll be starting probably in about 10 or 15 minutes. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. If not, be good, be kind, get outside, make sure you're touching grass, look out for reptiles, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.